I'd love to see if I could take a second and reflect what I think we've heard so far this morning. I think Bob gave a really good, detailed summary of the business plan, and I think what we heard was something that had some general principles and approaches and some very specific things. The general principle was, gee, we need to get a little better handle on how our stuff is being used on the web and manage access to and control of that. And then there's some very specific proposals which are very much related to what I would call the, quote, legacy newspaper industry, which is how do we get better cash flow on getting paid through a better tear sheet structure? How do we make sure that we do everything we possibly can to make sure that we preserve as long as possible the revenue stream from legals and also perform that important First Amendment function of letting people know through legals what's going on? And then I think we heard maybe some questions anyway about whether those particular things were broad. And so I guess what I'd like to ask the group, and not just the task force members, but everybody in the room here, do we feel as if what the task force is proposing is too specific to the newspaper industry and not broad enough to encompass users generally? That's one question. The other thing is, Bob, could I ask you, as you've worked through this over the last few months, could you put yourself in the position of a newspaper reader or a web user? Could you describe the experience and how it might change as a result of fast-forwarding 2 years when this is in place? It's often helpful to imagine when you've got an elephant like this and you're not really sure what the elephant looks like. You start to describe what we as consumers would see. So there's that, and then think about that broader question of how does this relate to information for consumers generally, as in addition to helping the newspaper industry?
Well, I think first and foremost, 2 years from now, if we do something, we've got to do something. Newspapers are going to be around. I think that is crucial. And as I said earlier, and we've said it from the beginning of when we got together last night, I think we all recognize we need to move. We need to do something. Is this the right answer? We're not absolutely certain, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And I think, Bill, on one of your slides earlier, you talked about trust. I mean, who are we going to trust? And from a local newspaper or any newspaper entity, if we can get that trust back and maintain it and do it in such a way that we are the first place news consumers, and I hate using that term, but news consumers go to get their news and information.